The piercing wail of the research shuttle's warning alarms shattered the focus of Zane Hall as the craft rapidly descended through the atmosphere of the planet Tomorrow. Red warning lights illuminated the cabin as the ship's artificial intelligence relayed a litany of system malfunctions. On the main view screen, the turbulent, storm-tinged clouds began to break, revealing an immense vista of emerald and indigo vegetation below. "Come on, give me something to work with," Zane muttered, his fingers moving rapidly across the control panel. The shuttle shook violently as yet another system failed. "Computer," he exclaimed, "find me an opening, anywhere I can set this bird down." The AI responded, "Scanning. Warning, critical engine failure imminent. Clearing detected 2 kilometers ahead. Survival probability, 37%. Zane's mouth twisted into a wry smile. "Better odds than my last blind date," he muttered. He forcefully yanked at the controls, fighting to keep the craft's nose pointed skyward as they descended. Massive trees, their trunks the size of skyscrapers, loomed ahead. Their bioluminescent vines cast an otherworldly glow through the perpetual twilight of the jungle floor. A clearing suddenly appeared, a gap in the dense canopy barely large enough to accommodate the shuttle. Zane aimed for the center, his teeth clenched tight as branches scraped against the hull of the vessel. The ground rushed up to meet them. Impact! When Zane regained consciousness, the first thing he noticed was the scent of rich, alien soil combined with the sharp tang of ozone emanating from the damaged systems. He pushed himself up from the control panel, wincing at the sharp pain in his ribs. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye. "Computer, status report?" Silence was his only answer. "Of course." He grabbed his emergency pack and research tablet, then forced open the damaged airlock. The humid air hit him like a wall, thick with strange scents and unfamiliar moisture. His scientific mind immediately began cataloging the surrounding flora. Gigantic fungi pulsed with an internal light, carnivorous flowers snapped at passing insects as large as his fist. A sound caught his attention, something moving through the undergrowth. Zane reached for his sample collection tool, the closest thing he had to a weapon. "Hello, I'm an Earth scientist. My ship crashed," he began, but the spear that embedded itself in the shuttle's hull next to his head cut off his introduction. They emerged from the jungle like spirits, tall, athletic women with skin the color of twilight. Their movements were fluid, predatory, and their minimal armor left no doubt about their impressive physical prowess. Each carried weapons that looked both primitive and deadly. "Well," Zane said slowly, raising his hands, "I suppose this explains why the settlement sensors didn't pick up any cities." He offered what he hoped was a disarming smile. "I don't suppose any of you ladies could point me towards the nearest repair shop." The tallest warrior stepped forward, her white hair braided with bones and feathers. She spoke in a language that his universal translator took a moment to process. "You jest, even as you face death, Pale One." "It's a coping mechanism," Zane replied. "Also, I'm more of a healthy pink than pale, though I admit the comparison suffers next to your lovely cerulean complexions." The warrior's eyes narrowed. She barked an order, and 2 others moved to flank him. "You will come with us. Queen Lyra will decide your fate." "Queen?" "Fascinating, a matriarchal warrior society with monarchical elements. I don't suppose you'd be willing to participate in a cultural exchange survey while we walk?" One of the warriors prodded him with her spear. Zane sighed. "I'll take that as a no." They marched him through the jungle for what felt like hours. Zane's scientist brain wouldn't shut off despite his predicament. He noticed how the warriors navigated, using the bioluminescent patterns in the vegetation, how they avoided certain plants, while using others as landmarks. Every observation was catalogued in his mental database. When they reached the village, it defied his expectations. Instead of being built on the ground, it sprawled through the middle layers of the canopy. Structures of wood and living vegetation merged with the massive trees, connected by bridges of woven vines and wooden walkways. The architecture somehow managed to look both organic and precisely engineered. They led him up a spiral staircase that wound around one of the larger trees, emerging onto a platform that served as some kind of audience chamber. And there she was, Queen Lyra. She lounged on a throne that appeared to be growing directly from the tree trunk, her midnight blue skin contrasting with armor that seemed to be made from iridescent insect carapaces. Her white hair cascaded unbound past her shoulders, and her eyes held the same predatory intelligence Zane had seen in apex creatures across a dozen worlds. "So," she said, her translator rendering her words with an aristocratic clip, "this is what crashed into my jungle? This is what the mighty Earth sends to study our world?" She stood, moving with fluid grace as she circled him. "How disappointing." Zane tracked her movement while maintaining a relaxed posture. "I apologize for any property damage. I'd be happy to file an insurance claim, but I seem to have left my paperwork in my other, crash-landed shuttle." A murmur ran through the gathered warriors, whether of amusement or outrage, he couldn't tell. Lyra's eyes flashed. "You mock us, even now?" "Not at all. I'm being perfectly sincere about the insurance, though I admit the paperwork might be complicated, given that your society doesn't seem to have developed a bureaucratic system yet." "Fascinating oversight, by the way." Lyra stepped closer, her height advantage forcing him to look up to meet her eyes. "You stand before the queen of the jungle, surrounded by warriors who could break you with one hand, and you choose to be amusing? Would you prefer I cower?" "I could try, but I'm afraid I'm not very good at it. Besides," he gave her his most charming smile, "how often do you get to meet someone who can make you laugh?" "I do not laugh." But something flickered in her expression, curiosity, perhaps. "Everyone laughs, Your Majesty, even queens." "Especially queens, I'd imagine. All that responsibility must get tedious without a little humor to balance it." She grabbed his chin, fingers strong enough to bruise. "You think you're clever, little man? Let us see how long you maintain this attitude." She addressed her warriors, without taking her eyes off him. "Put him in the holding pen. Tomorrow, we'll show the tribe how Earth's mighty scientists break when faced with real power." As two warriors moved to grab his arms, Zane maintained eye contact with Lyra. "You know what I think?" He spoke calmly. "I think you're already wondering if I might break, and I think that worries you more than you'd admit." Her eyes widened slightly before her expression hardened again. She released his chin with a small push. "Take him away." The holding pen turned out to be a cage of living wood, manipulated somehow to grow in prison bar formations. They'd placed it on a platform high in the canopy, where the bioluminescent life forms cast everything in shifting shadows and colored light. Zane sat with his back against the organic bars, watching the village's nighttime activities below. He could hear drums in the distance, see warriors moving between the platforms, carrying out their duties. The whole scene was anthropologically fascinating. He didn't look up when he heard footsteps approach his cage. "Come to check if I've started cowering yet, Your Majesty?" "How did you know it was me?" Lyra's voice held genuine curiosity beneath its imperial tone. "The way the guard straightened up, the pattern of your footsteps, the fact that you're the only one who'd come here at this hour to try to intimidate me privately." She circled the cage until she stood before him. "You think you know me so well, already? I know your type. You rule through strength, but you're intelligent enough to know strength isn't everything. That's why I fascinate you, because I'm not acting the way your understanding of strength says I should." "You think you fascinate me," she laughed, but it sounded forced. "You are nothing but an amusing pet, a way to show my people the weakness of your world." Zane stood slowly, moving to the bars where she stood. "Then why are you here having this conversation? Why not wait until tomorrow's public demonstration of my weakness?" She stepped closer, using her height to loom over him, even through the bars. "Perhaps I simply enjoy watching prey squirm." "Ah, but that's the problem, isn't it?" He gave her a lazy smile. "I'm not squirming. I'm standing here having a perfectly pleasant conversation with a fascinating woman who happens to be pointing out how much she'd like to see me squirm." Her hand shot through the bars, grabbing the front of his flight suit and pulling him against them. "You go too far." "Do I?" He kept his voice soft, intimate. "Or am I exactly where you want me to be?" For a long moment, they stood frozen in that position, faces inches apart through the bars. Zane could see the internal struggle in her eyes, intrigue warring with anger, curiosity with pride.